Alright. Hi, everyone. Oh my goodness. There's a lot of people in here. Totally not nervous at all. Everything's going to be fine. So, welcome to my talk. My name is Poppy Raad. I'm an artist and I work at Dinosaur Polo Club here in Wellington. A large part of my first few years being at DBC was working on developing Mini Motorways, which I'm here to talk to you about today. So I wanted to talk you through the development timeline of Mini Motorways, going through the concepting and prototyping phases, and show you how the look of the game evolved through its many prototypes to find its final form as an aesthetically pleasing city building puzzler. So, if you've never heard of Mini Motorways before, there's just a quick trailer, oh my god, to show you a little bit about the game. I don't like technology. No, we got the wrong one. How do I make it? There we go. Oh man. Yeah, I know how to do things. Nailed it. So the main gist of the game is roads are used to connect houses to larger buildings, and cars complete trips between them to and layer points. That away. Whee! Alright, so here's a little context about the lay of the land when we first started thinking about making a second game in the studio. Dinosaur Polo Club is a small Wellington-based indie studio. It was founded in 2013 and released its first game, Mini Metro, in 2015. And Mini Metro is a train commuter simulator where the player has to manage train systems in a growing city and provide commuters with efficient transport. Features heavy graphic design influences with bold colours, simple shape language, and a close replication of modern-day transit maps. It's had a very positive reception since its release and has received an award for excellence in audio at the 2016 Independent Games Fest. Alright, so now you have some idea where we started from, and have a little bit of an idea where we ended up. Let's jump into things and shed some light on how we got from trains to cars. We start with planning, ideation, and research, all things that are extremely important for building a solid foundation to create a game from. So to me, planning a game is basically asking a series of questions and then figuring out how to answer said questions. These answers can help shape vision, design, or art documents to give the team a shared understanding of our goals and a united direction to head in. So, what kind of game do we want to make? This can be answered by thinking about what games members of the team have previously made, what knowledge can be drawn on from these experiences, which of these games led to successes, and what expectations our audience has for our studio. How's it going to be made? What game engine do we want to make it in? Do we want to use Unity or Unreal or something else? Do we have a timeline that we need to adhere to? And if so, what is that timeline? And how is it going to look and play? This, by far, is the hardest and most time-consuming part to answer. It can be answered by looking into things like researching into other games, visual pieces, and analysing gaps in the market. But the majority of answers are going to come from exploring different prototypes and visual concepts. So, when we were thinking about these questions, we ended up with this sort of initial direction to head in. We wanted a game that embodies the same spirit as Mini Metro. It's not a true sequel, but part of the same family. We wanted, because we already had a core audience of fans who really enjoyed Metro's gameplay, we wanted to capture some of those core values and bring them through into the next game. So the first thing that we identified is that we want a game that captures the same toy-like quality as Mini Metro. For a large amount of people, Mini Metro is, not for a lack of a better word, a gamey game, but more like an interactive version of a subway map where the player can play out their fantasies of a more efficient train system in their city. The second is wanting a game that provides Wusel factor to the player. And Wusel factor is a German term used in gaming magazines to describe the satisfying feeling of watching the sort of hustle and bustle of an ant nest from above, which can be often seen in games like City Skylines and The Settlers. And from here, we identified a game called Freeways, which, with permission from the developer Captain Games, we decided to base some of the initial prototypes of Mini Motorways off of. And we liked Freeways in particular because we thought it had potential due to it reflecting some of the same toy-like qualities and Wusel factor that we were personally looking to achieve. So, once we had decided on a base concept for the game, it was time to start researching into art styles. I'm primarily a visual thinker, so I spent a large amount of time collecting varied visual research to help me quickly create different styles for each of our prototypes. And the main websites that I frequented for inspiration were Pinterest and Dribbble and Behance. These sites all have large amounts of graphic design and illustrative maps hosted on them, making it easy for me to find relevant resources. While identifying different styles and images to use as inspiration, I also made sure to take note of how each artist used textures and colours, and how they abstracted out cities while still representing them accurately, and how readable each design was. Looking at each piece with purpose helped me narrow down different styles that I wanted to test out in prototyping without wasting additional time. So a large part of my reference that I collected were topographic maps, city tourism brochures, thematic maps that focused on city personality rather than geographical accuracy, and design theory of symbology and map legends. These gave me a varied collection of visual languages to explore and dissect. And it's possible here to see how some of this reference informed the final look of the game. The colourfulness of the visual work that I did in the prototypes ended up being a key theme of the game that was carried through to final development. The pink concept on the far right was particularly a main source of inspiration for creating brightly coloured landscapes on each level. And in a moment, you'll be able to see how I took those through all the different prototypes. Okay, now we're on to the more exciting stuff, starting to make the actual game. Since we had our groundwork and planning sorted, we began work on the prototypes. Our prototyping phase took place over 9 months, starting in May 2018 and ending January 2019. Over this period, we covered over 20 plus prototypes, each of varying success, or we'll only be covering the main ones for the sake of time. Okay, so this is where we started with prototyping. It was basically a direct copy of the Freeways mechanics. The player connects inputs using roads that can raise over each other to create a layered spaghetti-like network. From here, we made a couple of variations, like new inputs appearing over time, forcing the player to adapt their network as the game progresses, similar to the continuous style of Mini Metro. And the art here was basically Freeways being given a facelift. You can recognise that pink colour palette as well coming through from my collected reference. And there's some initial concepts in here like clouds that we all really loved, but sadly never made it into the final game. And the second one is Voronoi regions, where we introduce two-way and one-way roads, which the player uses to draw through the regions to connect them. These regions were generated by making use of Voronoi diagrams to create individual regions for the city sections to spawn on. And a Voronoi diagram is basically a way of dividing up space into a number of regions, and this is what we use to quickly generate city zones. With the art here, I was playing with the idea of having different building styles and having points of interest to reflect tourist spots in each city. This would generate more traffic for the player to deal with as the game continued. And this prototype The player paints in the main roads and motorways with sub-streets connecting in automatically. Car demand came in waves of traffic, which presented an interesting, almost rhythmic gameplay challenge to the players. It uses road data taken from city maps, which, while a cool idea, was overall found to be frustrating, as the data that we used needed a lot of cleaning before it could be used. This was time-consuming to do, and ultimately the data collection aspect was scrapped. And this prototype was the original pitch that we sent to Apple, who gave us a very positive reaction and provided us some strong motivation to keep progressing forward with development. And you can also see here the first concepts for the large buildings in Mini Motorways, which stayed the same throughout the rest of development visually. Alright, so directly after sending that prototype to Apple, we ended up trying a new one where there was no free drawing and the game was set on a square grid, so quite a bit different. Small houses were required to be connected to larger buildings, and cars would travel between them to complete trips to score points. And this worked well for a number of reasons, this prototype in particular. So grid tiles meant that it was far easier to clearly show the player how much road they had left to work with, making managing resources an easily understandable conflict for the player to deal with. The traffic was more dynamic, which meant more roads had more cars on them, causing the game to be more interesting to watch and providing that sweet, sweet woosle factor. The loss condition was clearly communicated. You could see the cars backing up and congesting as the city slowly breaks down. And the simplicity of the tiles allowed us further exploration with the environment, allowing us to play with the obstacles like trees and water to the player. And we also tried a spin-off idea here where instead of square grids, the game was set on a hex grid. Even though this was really visually pleasing, we weren't able to recreate sort of Manhattan-style city grids with large city blocks, so it was ultimately scrapped. And from here, we continued honing down our ideas, bringing us closer to the final prototype and moving into pre-production for Mini Motorways. This included testing and adding more features like focusing on congestion rather than gridlock to resonate better with the continuous gameplay style of Mini Metro, testing different road drawing input methods and animations, separating out supply and demand and figuring out how to clearly communicate this to the player, weekly upgrades to match Mini Metro. Instead of rails and trains being given to the player, they were instead gifted road tiles, motorways, or bridges. And fun fact, after Tileways Alpha, each prototype was named after a game that had released within its development period. And this led to us having a variety of prototypes called things like Let's Go Tileways after Let's Go Pikachu, Tileways 76, Super Smash Tileways Ultimate, and New Super Tileways Deluxe. There's some more. You can see how it progressed to its pretty state. And after many months of production, we released Mini Motorways in Apple Arcade on September 2019, and then on Steam in 2021. And we've been blessed with a lot of success since its release, part of which can be absolutely attributed to our strong foundation of planning and prototyping, and we feel so grateful that it's done so well. I hope this talk enlightened you as to how we developed Mini Motorways coming off the back of Mini Metro, and how the two being tied together so closely in gameplay and aesthetics allowed us a strong direction to head our development in. I'll be around for the rest of the conference if you want to ask any questions, or feel free to hit me up on my Twitter or email. And thanks so much for coming.